Welcome to Sex and Happiness with Laurie Handlers. Amazing sex and intimacy are just around the corner. While Laurie puts the finishing touches on her new book, Sex and Happiness Over 60, please enjoy this show. It's one of her favorites from the Sex and Happiness archives.
Today is going to be a very interesting show. It's very interesting to me. It's about a phenomenon I had no idea about, erectile dysfunction in younger men. And let me first introduce my guest, and then we'll get started in this conversation. His name is Ruwan Meepagala.
Yeah, Meepagala. Awesome.
Meepagala. Okay, yeah. Okay. And Ruwan is a coach, a speaker, and a creative entrepreneur who helps people reconnect with their instincts. He teaches courses on intimacy and creativity online and around the world. So before we actually get into the subject, because the subject, as I explained to people, is kind of shocking to me, how did you get started as an intimacy coach and an entrepreneur who actually produces your courses online? I mean, it's probably not what you were in line to do, you know, when you were studying and in school and stuff. How did you make this turn towards the subject matter of sex and intimacy?
Yeah, so it's actually related to the topic of today. But so growing up, I was very anxious, very socially shut down, very fearful. And that led me into self-help and spirituality and learning how to improve myself, whether physically or mentally or whatnot. And that was kind of just a hobby. I think that's a pretty common hobby, self-help. But then after college, I was very goal-oriented. I was like, the 4-hour work week was my Bible. At one point, I was supposed to go into the Marines as an officer. So I was very like production-focused and goal-oriented, mission-driven. And at some point around just like a year out of college, I was 23 or so, my body just started shutting down. Like I was so hyper-focused on these goals. And essentially what we would say now is I was in my head, although I didn't have that language back then. And, what happened was the only thing that really finally got my attention, even though my emotions were drained and I was kind of apathetic and becoming numb as a human being, was that I lost the ability to feel arousal. So among my many goals was like dating and connecting with women and whatnot. And I had a bunch of experiences in a row where I had women coming home with me, wanting to have sex with me, but my body was so shut down that I couldn't feel anything. And it was essentially impotence, even though I was physically healthy at 23. And yeah, so it was humiliating. But it also made me recognize like, oh, there's a lot of things going wrong in my life. This is kind of a symptom, like the fact that my genitals don't work, right? Like it was like the whole way I was going through life was hyper focused on like achieving results of whatever was on my goal sheet. Like I wasn't feeling anything. But that was finally the thing that got me to really explore sexuality and figure out really what was wrong. It wasn't anything physical, although I did go a whole year taking Viagra and that totally messed me up. I finally dropped that. It's led me to Tantra and other things like that got me in touch with my body and my emotions and my instincts. And what I found from also getting back my sex drive and having a normal sexual response again, it was also the root of my creativity, of my feelings, of serenity, all these things that, I mean, I know I'm preaching to the choir right now, but like, getting in touch with my sexuality and getting in touch with my inner self and my creativity were one thing. And my ED issue was just a symptom of that, of a disconnect.
Let's roll back a little bit. Like, what drove you so much? It seems like an inner competition that's just, high performance. Like, were your parents super pressuresome? Was your school super pressuresome?
No,
what put that pressure on you?
I have my parents are Asian, so obviously they put pressure on school. But I think really it was being humiliated a lot when I was younger, and we can this might tie to our topic today, but like across the board, I was kind of a beta male when it came to everything. I was bullied. Even within my friend group, I was like low guy on the totem pole.
Wow.
I couldn't connect with girls. I really started feeling pain like post puberty when everyone I knew was dating, and I just couldn't make eye contact, let alone ask out a girl. And I think this failure has made me want to like overachieve, maybe compensate from past failure. I was actually on another podcast speaking about like how I got into like coaching men on dating, and I think my origin story was getting rejected really hard. I mean, it sounds silly, but like being rejected in a humiliating way in high school kind of drove me to never want to feel that again.
It's, and when it's so crazy to me because, I met you just a year or so ago, and, I just want my listeners to know, this man that I'm talking to is absolutely gorgeous, sexy, hot, confident, beautiful. Men who are losing their hair would do anything to have your head of hair. You know what I mean? Like, I find you so adorable, so gorgeous. And the pain of the reality of the story that you're telling, when you were growing up, and the rejection and humiliation, it's like, it's hard to imagine, that ever happening to you in the state that you're in right now. So, I met you like post your conquest of all this, but
yeah,
it's so hard to see you that way. So thank you.
It's kind of cliche, but like the world gives you what you're feeling inside. I might not have said that in the best way, but like I was just feeling so much anxiety all the time that it's like I attracted rejection. I attracted being topped and humiliated and stuff. I mean, I don't want to make it sound like people are already shitting on me, but I always felt like that. I was like almost agoraphobic, where I felt anxiety going out of the house and things like that.
Amazing. Just amazing. Now you travel the world.
Yeah.
So wait, I just want to say to people, if you're listening to this show, clearly we don't know who you are. I know who many of my listeners are, but I don't know everybody. There's a lot of you. If you're listening to the show and you have any of this, whether you're a young man and you have erectile dysfunction, or you're a man or a woman, and or a gender bender person, somebody who's experimenting with trans, and you feel, like you can't go out of the house, or you feel bullied, or whatever it is, this is just proof that anything can change if you shift the way you are dealing with the world. Like, it's like, it's really about self-empowerment. You will get how you are. And when you shift that, and there's many ways to shift that. Ruwan's program is being one way, my program is being another way, and then the myriad of other guests that I've had, there's so much you could do to shift that. So Ruwan, you're a beautiful example of somebody who's taken charge of their life and moved to change it. Do you ever look in the mirror and go like, who am I? How did this happen? Sometimes
like, wow, like I just feel like really proud that, because like, not to say that my life has been any harder than anyone else's, but like I kind of dove into certain points of suffering, and I really love what you just said about like the self-empowerment, because actually we might even talk about it, like some of the political stuff with men. I think one of the issues I have right now, which is I think is super disempowering to all people, not just young men, but is like this idea that society needs to fix your problems for you. Like, I mean, like the bullying example, like I kind of recoil when I see some of the campaigns against bullying. Not that bullying is good, obviously, but like the message that I would give myself as a younger person, or anyone who's dealing with bullying, is not like tell authorities or try to reconstruct society to prevent bullies, but it's to learn how to stand up for yourself. Like that to me is like the hero's journey in all of us, where we learn to, take matters into our own hands, and like kind of like what you said, you get what you are. Like, you learn how to be something better, and you won't deal with the crap that you're dealing with.
Listen, exactly. I mean, exactly. I had a belief. It's interesting because when you say all this, what comes to my mind is that for a very long time, I had a belief that I was unlovable. And so while I had people who loved me and I had lovers, I just couldn't ever fathom that I was really loved. And when I finally really loved myself, and really saw how lovable I was, everything in my whole life shifted.
Mhm.
You know, and in my life now I have the love of my life. And it's like, oh, how did that happen? You know, like, where did he come from? What planet did he grow up on? You know, it's taken a long time, but I would say that it took me a really long time to just relax about it and just go, yeah, you're lovable. Shut up, you know, and just keep giving out love. Just keep being who you want the world to be to you. Just keep being that, and it's and that's
Totally.
stand out. So I feel like you're a perfect example of that also. Ron, can you tell me, like, how widespread is this situation with younger men and erectile
So
dysfunction?
I only know, I mean, obviously, people who reach out to me are a certain sample. They're not representative of the population. But one of the stats that I saw on one of these cloud pharmacies, which I will rant about in a second, said that 52% of men have dealt with some sort of impotence issue. And while I'm grateful for the stat, I mean, I'll just say that I'm really pissed off. And what made me become like reinvigorated to talk about this again was seeing all these ads for, like, there's a company, Get Roman, and then one for Hims, where they make it really easy for guys to basically get prescription Viagra in almost like the same way that, like, when weed first became legal, like you can kind of just get a bullshit prescription, like, oh yeah, my eyes hurt, great, here's a, you know, it's kind of becoming like that for Viagra. And I suffered from taking Viagra because the problem isn't I mean, erectile dysfunction is just a symptom of a deeper issue. It's not the actual problem for most men.
So, yeah, right. So the fact that their penis doesn't, you know, get erect from blood vessels that swell up and arousal, that's not really the problem in most cases. It's more psychological or emotional or something that has to do, a situation that could be shifted more easily than if it was really a physical problem.
Yeah, I mean, both easier and maybe even harder in some ways. Like, getting in touch with your feelings is like kind of a big challenge for a lot of guys, which is why, like, taking a pill might seem like more appealing at times. But yeah, I mean, that is the root of it. I mean, in every single, I have a 100% success rate helping guys overcome ED. And it's simply because I've recognized that getting in touch with your feelings is the solution for almost everyone. Obviously, if you have a urological issue, I mean, that's something different. But
Yeah.
yeah.
And those people, you know, people with a neurological issue might not be the people who are attracted to seek you out. People
Right.
who get, you know, like when you put something out there about what you're doing, somebody who needs you will find you, and people who need other things will find other solutions. But you're talking about being able to also get Viagra too easily, Viagra or Cialis or whatever else they're using these days, too easily by just saying, you know, doc, blah, 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 and the doctor writes out a script. Isn't that what doctors do these days? I mean, they just write out. They do two things.
To the, you know, so quick, it's so easy to get antidepressants now. It's like,
right. To me, doctors they do two things. They cut or they prescribe.
Right.
They know how to operate, and some things don't require an operation. And when they don't, they prescribe a medication.
Totally.
And then also you can go online and get things from overseas. So you can get stuff from Mexico. You can get stuff from Canada. You can get stuff from India. You know, when I've been in Mexico, coming back across the border, because Arizona is one of those border states. I don't want to get into that whole politic. But when I've been there, like right at the border, in the border towns, there are all these pharmacies. And the biggest thing that they advertise is Viagra and Cialis.
Huh.
Like, you know, 2 seconds before you come back to the United States, don't forget your Viagra and your Cialis. Oh, my God. So, yeah. So let's talk about, I see, when you and I first broached this subject, the thing I knew about was young men going clubbing. You know, like, I didn't figure that they had erectile dysfunction. I just figured there was a whole bunch of men, 35 and under, who just took Viagra to have an erection while dancing in a club.
Yeah, and I think that's how, like, when it was introduced to me when I was 23,